right, headlines once again brought to you by our good friends at Boston Pizza. So thanks for that. Look forward to another week of headlines here on the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Before we get to the heavy stuff, which is the ongoing saga, Ray, of Hockey Canada, meeting with the House of Commons Committee, let's talk about a couple of recent signings, because I believe Tuesday on the podcast, we talked a little bit about Jason Robertson. You know, I tweeted yesterday, being Wednesday, that a shift was required to close the gap in the negotiation. And that shift happened late yesterday and ended up in a 4-year, $31 million contract for Jason Robertson. Maybe not the long-term deal that he was looking for, right? But slightly better than the bridge that the Dallas Stars were looking for. But an important signing, I think, given everything that Jason Robertson brings to the Stars.
Well, it is. I mean, Robertson, Hintz, and Joe Pavelski were one of the best lines in the National Hockey League last year. And for a Dallas team that is looking to diversify their offense, they hope that new coach Pete DeBoer can bring a different look to that group that Rick Bowness played with. Robertson's critical. He's also young. He's part of their core. I'm curious. He's part of their immediate and future core. I think that's important, right, to note. What was the switch, Dregs? Where was the change? Because it looked like they were stalemated.
Yeah. It feels like it had to come more from the Dallas side of things. So maybe owner Tom Ghilardi got more actively involved and said, look, let's give the extra year, the extra two. As I said, I think Dallas was pushing for that bridge. And initially, Jason wanted a long-term, maybe even the maximum, 8 years.
Of course he did.
But it doesn't help the player not playing either. Or as you've said repeatedly, when you miss training camp, you miss the preseason, you're expected as a 40-plus goal scorer to step into the lineup immediately and be impactful and contribute. But when you're starting behind the 8 ball, like every player who misses time does, and that becomes a challenge. So perhaps that was the compromise.
So I look at the way Dallas, they're two big signings in the offseason. They signed Jake Ottinger to 3 years, and they signed Jason Robertson to 4. So they stagger out those two contracts, which are, among their most important players going forward. Robertson will be a restricted free agent still at the end of that deal. So that's pretty critical to note too. He doesn't walk to unrestricted free agency. So it gives them a little bit of, I wouldn't say control, but the Stars can shape the negotiation. And Robertson jumps from $795,000 to $7 million.
Yeah.
Can you imagine
7.75?
Can you imagine the first look at his first pay stub? It's going to be like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I asked Rick Bowness last year, we were doing a Dallas game late in the year. And I said, so who can I compare Robertson to? Like, he's not the fastest guy. He's not the strongest guy. And right away, he thought for just a second and he came up with Luc Robitaille.
Oof.
And he said, not the fastest guy. He's got a good shot, but not an Ovechkin shot. But he always seems to be in the place that the puck is when he shoots it. And he's really accurate. Yeah. And so I watched him and I'm like, I played with Luke for a number of years and
you can see it.
You can see it. And I was like, it's a really good comparison. So Dallas, pretty excited, I'm sure, to get Robertson in the fold.
Okay. Thoughts on the Matt Barzal contract, the extension with the New York Islanders? You go back to the 17-18 season, he had 85 points, his only 20 or 20 plus goal season to this point, 59 points last year, only played 73 games in the regular season. He gets a whopping 8-year maximum extension and $9.15 million AAV. I mean, I think Matt Barzal is a very, very good player, but man, that's strong work in negotiating against the wily old veteran in Lou Lamoriello.
Well, I think Barzal had a little bit of the upper hand here for an Islander team that was the only team not to sign a free agent in the offseason.
Yeah.
There was some pressure, whether he says he feels it or not, on Lou Lamoriello to make something happen to to get Barzel signed. I know he traded for Romanov at the draft and got Romanov signed. He got Noah Dobson signed, and but no new offense in the way or on the way in the door.
No.
So there's a lot of pressure on Barzel, but I've known Matt a little bit since he was just a little kid. He likes the focus. He likes the pressure. I do think it was pretty clear there was a little, I'll say friction, but I don't mean it personally. I mean friction in the way that he wanted to play versus the way Barry Trotz wanted to coach. Mm-hmm. I think that lessens off a little bit with Lane Lambert there.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a more free Matt Barzal to play this year. And I'm with you. 9 million bones is a lot. Oh my gosh. Like it's crazy money. But I do think he's beyond a point a game player. I do think that 17-18 season is more the norm than the outlier. I think we also have to take into consideration the last couple of years, not this past year, but the two previous were just scrambled eggs.
Right.
This last year in a contract year, some guys respond to that really well and they have enormous years. Jason Robertson. Other guys don't. Me. I know this. You try to do everything. The worse stretch you go in, the worse it gets. The harder you try. You're like, I'm not getting any points. They're not going to want to sign me. What the hell's going to happen? The harder
I'm losing
you try,
money every shift here.
And it goes backwards on you. And that's kind of what I thought happened to Barzal. Now, he's got the security. He's got the money. He's got the focus from the team and their fans. And I do think he will produce.
Excellent. Well, next up is David Posternok, and we'll talk about this in podcasts to come because we know the Bruins are putting a push. They're trying to get this guy extended. Where he fits into the cap stratosphere, we'll find out. But that'll be next in terms of player signings, I would think. Hockey Canada in the headlines almost on an hourly basis. Now, we haven't necessarily avoided this story. It's just it feels like it's so vastly and understandably reported that maybe when you come to the Ray and Dregs podcast, you just want the opinion. You want to have a few chuckles. You want to talk about the headlines of the hockey stories. And this goes well beyond the hockey story, obviously. So Tim Hortons and TELUS, major sponsors, pulling their funding from the men's program of Hockey Canada amid concerns over the perception that there's a slow play being worked here to embrace change of leadership, to drive cultural change. And now the House of Commons Committee has Hockey Canada and their interim chair, Andrea Skinner, in its crosshairs, asking fair but very difficult questions, right? Why is the leadership group still intact? I would extend that to the board, Ray, because I think back to when Scott Smith was in the hot seat, still is, but was literally several weeks back, and point blank was asked, should you be let go? And he said, look, that's up to the board. That's ultimately up to the board. Well, it's still up to the board. And it doesn't feel, at least from my perspective, that there can be any healing in any of this until there is a change of leadership, which doesn't just include Scott Smith. It includes wiping out that board and starting fresh. That's the part that I struggle with. I can't understand what are they waiting for? Because clearly the rest of the hockey world, Canada specifically, is screaming for change.
It's sad. It's disappointing. I can only shake my head at the board's position. Like as you just said, Dregs, I just don't understand how they could be oblivious to the views coming from not just one direction, from every direction, that the people in Canada that pay the dues, that the reason there is a board, which are the parents of the kids that play the game, want change. I haven't heard one reason why a new board should not be in place. Like I haven't heard one reason. I know, Andrea Skinner mentioned that, who's going to turn the lights on? I don't know. Somebody will figure it out. We'll get the lights on. I know that was probably a lash away comment, to be fair, but there's just no reason to suspect that this board can have the confidence of the people that they're there to serve going forward. I mean, they've announced an action plan going forward, and I'll be honest, Dregs, I mean, you've got to really get into the nuts and bolts of it to truly understand what that action plan is really all about. It very well might be the right action plan, but new people have to be in charge of that plan, of the implementation of the going forward plan. There's got to be new faces. The views have to come from different people. And I think that's really the only way to move forward. It feels like maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. It feels like an inevitability that's what's going to happen. Let's get moving.
Yeah, and it doesn't wash away allegations. It doesn't take away from ongoing investigations, but it needs new life. It needs new direction. It needs new ideas, decision makers, all of that. So obviously it's a developing story, and we encourage you to stay on with tsn.ca, Rick Westhead, Katie Strang doing excellent work. So we'll revisit this story undoubtedly, Ray, as it continues to evolve. Those are your headlines, brought to you by Boston Pizza.